The exact reason Ferrari failed to challenge for pole at Zandvoort Qualifying will be fully revealed by the end of this video, but right now we are staring at a confirmed 31-second gap between Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris that demands an explanation before Sunday's race begins. That specific 0.3 deficit is not just a number on a timing screen, it is the tangible result of a high-stakes technical gamble Ferrari made with their accelerated SF26 floor package. And understanding why that upgrade did not translate into a front-row lockout requires us to untangle two completely different narratives from the same Saturday afternoon. We know the stopwatch does not lie, yet the story behind why Hamilton qualified fifth while McLaren and Mercedes dominated the top four is far more complicated than a simple lack of pace. And the answer hinges on a critical adaptation window that may have already closed before the checkered flag waved on Q3. But here is the tension that makes this entire situation so precarious for the championship fight. If the issue was purely mechanical or aerodynamic, you would expect both Ferrari drivers to suffer equally, yet Charles Leclerc appeared significantly more comfortable with the new aeromechanical balance changes throughout the weekend. So why was Hamilton left describing his sprint qualifying car as completely different from what he felt in free practice, only to emerge from main qualifying sounding calm and optimistic about challenging the cars ahead? This disconnect between teammate performance and driver confidence suggests the real failure point might not be the hardware itself, but something far more elusive about how that hardware interacts with driving style under extreme pressure. Until we resolve whether this is a fundamental flaw in the Barcelona evolved floor or simply a setup mismatch that can be corrected overnight, every strategic decision Ferrari makes for tomorrow remains shadowed by doubt. Lando Norris set the benchmark at 1:11.63. George Russell followed. Kimi Antonelli took third. Oscar Piastri locked out the top four for the Silver Arrows and Woking Alliance, creating a formidable barrier that Hamilton could not breach despite taking P5 with his final lap as rain threatened the circuit. He ran the rain risk. He secured the position. He beat both Red Bulls. Yet that 31-second margin to pole represents a massive chunk of time in modern Formula One, especially when you consider Ferrari brought 5 distinct upgrades across the floor, diffuser and beam wing specifically targeting more downforce for this high-load circuit. The new floor was described as a direct evolution of the component first introduced at round 7 in Barcelona, meaning this was not experimental prototype work, but refined development intended to yield immediate performance gains. So where does that leave us right now? We have a team that arrived with targeted upgrades, a driver who struggled massively in spring qualifying yet recovered to beat both Red Bulls in the main session, and a teammate who seemed to extract maximum performance from the same equipment without the same level of frustration. Fred Vasseur noted after sprint qualifying that they needed to work on the balance of the car to do better, acknowledging that Hamilton did not manage to put a good lap together in SQ3 after a very strong start in free practice. But the question nobody has definitively answered is whether those balance adjustments actually solved the underlying problem or merely masked it enough to salvage 5th place. Hamilton himself said he feels optimistic and is grateful to be there, but also wished he was further ahead, which tells us the team knows the current performance level is not where it needs to be against a McLaren-Mercedes front four that now holds all the strategic advantages for tomorrow. That 0.331-second deficit to Lando Norris is not evenly distributed across the lap, which makes diagnosing the failure significantly harder for Ferrari's engineering team tonight. When you break down the sector times from that final Q3 run, the data suggests Hamilton was actually competitive in the high-speed sections where the new floor and diffuser revisions should theoretically generate the most benefit. Yet he hemorrhaged time in the technical transitions where mechanical grip and driver confidence in the aero platform matter more than peak downforce numbers. This pattern contradicts the assumption that the upgraded package simply lacks overall load, pointing instead toward a narrower but more insidious problem with how the car delivers that load through the steering wheel when the driver needs it most. George Russell's +0. 102's gap to pole and Kimi Antonelli's +0. 133 show Mercedes found a similar sweet spot, while Oscar Piastri's +0. 42's confirms McLaren's baseline consistency across both cars, making Hamilton's 0.3 shortfall look even more anomalous against a field where the top 6 were separated by less than half a second. He trusted it, then doubted, too late. That rhythm of hesitation is exactly what separates a 1:11.63 pole lap from a 1:11.494 fifth-place effort at a circuit like Zandvoort, where commitment through the banking sequences cannot be faked or recovered mid-corner. Motorsport.com's sprint qualifying coverage noted that Hamilton has not yet completely adapted to the aeromechanical balance changes introduced by the new floor, and while that assessment was tied to the earlier session, the underlying adaptation challenge clearly persisted into main qualifying despite the team's overnight setup work. The SF26 reportedly behaved extremely well on the soft compound, according to Ferrari-focused analysis, and Leclerc's excellent understanding of the car was reflected in his soft tire performance throughout the weekend, suggesting the hardware itself is capable of matching the front four when the driver window alignment is correct. But capability does not equal extraction, and Hamilton's P5 result represents the gap between theoretical performance and realized pace under conditions where rain threatened to punish any tentative approach. What happens when a 7-time world champion and Ferrari's lead title challenger cannot access the same performance envelope as his teammate on identical equipment during the most important session of the weekend? You get a scenario where championship mathematics collide with engineering reality. Because starting fifth behind 2 McLarens and 2 Mercedes means Hamilton must now rely on strategic variance rather than pure pace to recover positions against rivals who hold both track position and tire management advantages. Sky Sports headlined their report around Lewis Hamilton's struggles, even while noting he still beat both Red Bulls, capturing the dual nature of a result that is simultaneously respectable in isolation and disappointing relative to Ferrari's pre-session expectations with their accelerated upgrade package. Racing News 36.5 and Planet F1 treated the McLaren-Mercedes front four lockout as the dominant storyline, framing Ferrari's P5 and P6 as competitive midfield-of-the-front results rather than a crisis. But that external perspective does not change the internal pressure on a team that brought 5 targeted upgrades expecting to close the gap to the leaders, not consolidate third-best status. Let's bring this back to the core issue we identified at the start. We promised to reveal why Ferrari failed to challenge for pole, and the answer emerging from the timing data is that the failure was not catastrophic but incremental. Rooted in an adaptation deficit that compounded through each phase of qualifying, rather than a single catastrophic setup error. Hamilton's own words after the session reflect this nuance perfectly, as he stated via Racing News 36.5 that fifth is not the greatest but could be far worse, expressing gratitude for the position while acknowledging he wished he was further ahead. That measured tone stands in stark contrast to the baffled frustration that characterized his sprint qualifying reaction, suggesting the team made genuine progress between sessions but not enough to overcome the fundamental comfort gap that Leclerc navigated more successfully. The new floor evolved from Barcelona specifications may ultimately prove to be the right direction, but at Zandvoort it created a performance ceiling that only one Ferrari driver could consistently approach, leaving Hamilton to salvage what he could rather than attack the ultimate lap time that Norris delivered without reservation. This is where it gets serious. If Ferrari cannot unlock the full potential of this accelerated SF26 floor package at Zandvoort, the 50-point championship deficit to Kimi Antonelli risks becoming mathematically insurmountable before the season reaches its decisive phase. The upgrade was never just about one qualifying session. It was designed as a platform foundation for the remainder of 2026, meaning every 10th left on the table today compounds across every remaining circuit where downforce efficiency dictates race outcomes. Ferrari brought 5 distinct upgrades across the floor, diffuser and beam wing, specifically targeting increased downforce for this high-load track, with the new floor described by multiple Ferrari-focused outlets as a direct evolution of the component first introduced at Barcelona Catalunya during round 7 of the season. That lineage matters because it means the team is not testing unproven concepts, but refining known quantities, which raises the stakes when those refinements fail to deliver the expected step change in performance against rivals who have clearly found more from their own development trajectory. New parts arrived, expectations rose, reality hit. The rear wing and diffuser revisions were intended to complement the floor's aerodynamic signature, creating a cohesive package that would allow both drivers to attack Zandvoort's unique banking sequences with greater stability and cornering commitment. Yet the data from main qualifying shows that while Leclerc extracted enough performance to qualify 6th, just 0.064 seconds behind his teammate, neither Ferrari could match the 111. 163 benchmark set by Norris or even the 111. 296 that placed Antonelli 3rd for Mercedes. Fred Vasseur acknowledged after sprint qualifying that Charles delivered a good performance in which he was able to put everything together, contrasting sharply with his assessment that Hamilton did not manage to put a good lap together in SQ3 despite a very strong start in free practice. That divergence suggests the upgrade package has a narrower operational window than anticipated, one that rewards precise adaptation but punishes any lingering uncertainty in how the aeromechanical balance translates through the steering wheel under qualifying trim. So what does this mean for Ferrari's development roadmap going forward? If the Barcelona evolved floor represents the correct philosophical direction but requires setup compromises that only one driver can currently exploit, the team faces an uncomfortable choice between optimizing for Leclerc's comfort zone or continuing to chase a broader operating range that may delay performance gains for Hamilton. Com noted that Hamilton has not yet completely adapted to the aeromechanical balance changes introduced by the new floor, and while that observation emerged from sprint qualifying coverage, the persistence of the gap into main qualifying indicates the adaptation challenge is structural rather than temporary. The SF26 reportedly behaved extremely well on the soft compound according to Ferrari-focused analysis, yet excellent tire behavior does not automatically translate to ultimate lap time when the driver lacks the confidence to commit fully to each braking zone and apex. This disconnect between mechanical capability and human extraction is precisely what separates a competitive midfield of the front result from genuine pole contention, and it is the unresolved variable that will define Ferrari's ceiling for the rest of the championship fight. Hamilton's measured optimism after securing P5 reflects this reality, as he told Racing News 365 that hopefully with the right strategy and right execution, Ferrari can challenge the cars ahead on Sunday. That conditional phrasing acknowledges the team no longer controls their destiny through pure pace alone, having ceded that advantage to a McLaren-Mercedes front four that now holds both grid position and strategic flexibility. The upgraded package may still prove transformative over subsequent races as Hamilton closes the adaptation gap. But at Zandvoort, it created a scenario where Ferrari's lead title challenger must now rely on variables beyond his direct control to recover ground against rivals who qualified ahead without reservation. Whether that recovery materializes tomorrow will determine whether this weekend represents a temporary setback in an otherwise sound development trajectory, or the moment when Ferrari's 2026 championship aspirations began to slip irreversibly out of reach.